The Holy Land has inspired countless artists, writers, and filmmakers over the years, and it's easy to understand why. The lands of the Middle East represent the cradle of Western civilization and the birthplace of its greatest book, the Holy Bible. When Charlton Heston first traveled here in the mid-50s, while portraying Moses in the film The Ten Commandments, he too was captivated. The more he studied for that role, the more determined he became to understand the texts from which it sprang. Over the next 40 years, he repeatedly found himself performing biblical stories in different venues. But that wasn't enough. In his heart, he knew he would one day return to the Holy Land so he could better understand the origins of the stories he had come to know and love. For the next 30 minutes, you'll walk with him as he travels this terrain once again. You'll come to understand how his personal odyssey took shape as the television event Charlton Heston Presents the Bible.
I think the most unusual aspect of this whole project is the way we're treating the stories in the Bible. Long before the Egyptians had invented papyrus, or before the Phoenicians had invented writing for that matter, these stories were being told the way we're telling them. That's what they were designed for, to be told around campfires in the dark by storytellers who passed them on in an oral tradition from generation to generation. You can imagine the storyteller selecting some likely young lad and saying, look, you can stay in my tent and I'll take care of you and see that you get fed and nobody gives you a hard time, but you've got to learn these stories, because when I die, you've got to pass them on. I think we're doing something absolutely unusual, and I think you have to be an actor to do this, because that's what I do. I'm not a rabbi or a priest or a teacher or a professor or a scientist or an historian, none of those things. I tell stories, and these are the best stories there ever were.
The project was ambitious. Heston's producers, his son Fraser Heston and John Stronach, assembled a crew of 60, and after mapping out a tight 5-week shooting schedule, departed for Israel and Egypt so that Heston could tell these timeless stories in their original settings.
One of the amazing things about this production is how it started with this little kernel of an idea that Chuck had to do the Bible. And over the last year and a half, it's turned into this personal odyssey through the Holy Land. And what was going to be just a short little documentary is now a major television event.
We wanted to create something about the Bible that has never been done before. We wanted to make a performance piece that consisted of the Bible as a great work of literature, as a great work of art, aside from its value as a religious document, which is also remarkable. But our purpose was artistic. And the best thing I did on this picture was hire the director, Tony Westman, who is an old friend of mine, a documentary filmmaker. He's won some awards in Canada, and he's since become a very eminent director of photography and television.
I would like to do an exit from the Jeep, getting out the size, just getting out, you kind of, you stop, maybe you come up to about there, maybe do a little glance around or a thing like that, like that. Yes. No. No words. No words.
When we had the original redaction that Chuck had done, we realized that we had a lot of words, but we had no script, we had no film, and we needed a structure in order to make it work. So in the course of shopping it around, it was suggested that we have commentaries. So we began to think about commentaries and writing about things, but we said, well, what are we going to say? And we only have 1 or 2 minutes each time we stop for a little commentary.
We realized it needed more than just telling the stories, and I needed to know more about where the stories took place. And Fraser and Tony both said, why don't we set this in the course of doing your research? You research all your parts, do it that way. We'll get a Jeep and give you, here's your sketchbook, and you can go around and find out about Sinai and about the Sea of Galilee. And I played Moses, but I never crossed over Jordan, just like him.
The purpose with coming here was the Holy Land, was the religious center of the world in terms of the top 3 religions. And so that became the seminal idea which really launched the thing that became the script that we have today, is we began to think of the idea of a pilgrimage. We began to think of Chuck as a person who indeed, through his history as an actor, began to reassert his thinking, not so much in a dramatic sense as more of a historical and a literary and poetic sense. And so his long exposure with the text gave him a lovely understanding of the territory of the text. And it became important to communicate that in a story-like way. And so by having a pilgrimage, where he's in fact coming to the Holy Land and looking at these things, it became just a natural kind of a thing. Probably one of the most amusing things that I have to continually laugh about is my own ignorance about the Bible. Now I'm in a crash course of trying to learn not only the Bible itself, but all the historical little bits that before and after that follow.
Tony brings to this project a tremendous sophistication. He understands art, he understands music, he understands film as an art form, and history and literature. He had his own personal conversion on Mount Sinai during a location scout where he went up to the top of the mountain and he said, well, I don't know what religion it was, but I really felt that I could feel the presence of God up there.
Everyone on the crew recognized the awesome power of the landscape, and it quickly became clear that the power of the film would lie not just in Heston's performance on the stage of a first-century Roman amphitheater, but in his on-the-scene commentaries. It was not enough to provide a little background information. Heston would invite the viewer to come along as he immersed himself in the history of the region and the stories.
Scoop it, do it, then bring it up.
Yeah. Okay, it'll be like this then. This is the beginning.
Jim.
On action, I'll go. Woods of God.
How was that? You like that? Okay, here we go.
Okay, let's go, please. Quiet, please.
Message.
The voice of God echoes through the Old Testament. In the New, we hear him only twice. Most significantly, when his son is baptized, here in the River Jordan. Baptist himself was regarded by some as the Messiah. Christ chose to be baptized by him. Seems to be his Father's wish in preparation for his ministry. Maybe God is pleased with both men. Let us gather by the river, as the gospel song has it, and be baptized.
Good. Jackson, all right? How we do with the words? Good.
I think probably the most exciting aspect of this whole project is the fact that Chuck is getting a chance to do something that came directly out of his own nature and his own convictions. Not a part that someone handed him and said, here you are, step into this role. I think he's been waiting all his life to do this.
Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Yea, hath God not said, Ye shall eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said, We may eat of the fruit of the trees which are in the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, You shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Ye shall not surely die, said the serpent. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be like God, knowing good and evil.
The use of on-screen artwork became another important facet of the project. There was no shortage of paintings to choose from. For centuries, all the great masters focused on religious subjects.
We started a database. It became a project in its own. We had something like 1,500 paintings in our database and some sculptures and etchings, which were either exemplary of certain artwork painted about specific stories, Michelangelo's creation of Adam, etc., or were general paintings which we could use like a master shot to illustrate a scene, to illustrate perhaps is the wrong word, to photograph something that cannot be photographed. How do you do the creation in the Bible? Well, we have wonderful paintings, Turner sunsets and O'Keeffe landscapes and Bierstadt paintings of Yosemite Park and things that, you know, the natural world, things of that sort. So we got very excited about this, and we realized that this in itself was almost an entire project.
Just as these great paintings enhanced Heston's performance, the historical settings added weight to his commentaries. Most important location of all was Jerusalem, a holy place not to one, but to three of the world's great religions. The producers needed a base of operations, a setting in which the stories themselves could be told. Eventually, they settled upon a recently discovered Roman amphitheater north of Jerusalem, an appropriate location given that Rome controlled Jerusalem in the time of Christ and later ensured the spread of Christianity.
The wonderful thing about this place for filming a picture like the Bible is that it's a real place. It's a real amphitheater with real stones, and people actually sat in these seats and watched a performance, perhaps not unlike this one, although on a different subject, 2,000 years ago. When you shoot in a place like this, there is an ambience. There is a kind of a thing that you pick up from the stones just by touching them, and it's the same stones that the Romans walked on. Something happens that doesn't happen in a soundstage. We thought about shooting this on a soundstage at one point, this portion, the performance portion. But we realized that, you know, what could we do? No matter how much budget we had set aside for it, we couldn't begin to duplicate something like these actual pillars.
And among the sons of Isaac,
The location was indeed an essential ingredient of the producer's vision, but it had its drawbacks. Simple shots like this one required a great deal of planning. The challenges were magnified when water became the setting. Nevertheless, the producers knew that certain shots were crucial. To enhance the commentary about Noah and the flood, Heston and his crew of 60 set sail on the Red Sea. Today, this body of water, bordered by Egypt, Israel, and Jordan, is one of the world's most intense political flashpoints. But it also played a crucial role in the ancient Hebrew culture. Thus, in spite of the difficulties it posed, the producers realized that no other setting would do. Finally, after hours of arduous labor, Heston and crew got the shots they needed, and in the end, it all looked effortless. The days became even more grueling when the production moved to the desert, another landscape that figures prominently in the stories of the Bible. Filming started each morning before dawn, even as the incessant desert winds blew coarse sand into the faces of Heston and the crew. The sun pushed the temperature to a searing 125 degrees. By 10 a.m., the heat would become unbearable, and the crew would break from 10 to 4, find what little relief they could, and then return to complete the task at hand, shooting until nightfall. In this case, the script was succinct, one line: Chuck climbs a lonely sand dune and sees the pyramids. But getting that single shot took most of one day. During production, the forces of nature in this harsh yet beautiful environment tested both Heston and his crew. Ultimately, however, it all proved to be worthwhile. The majesty of this landscape is a constant presence in the stories of the Bible. In many ways, it shaped the key figures of both testaments.
I've been asked about working with my father many times in the course of my career. I've made 4 or 5 pictures with him now, and I know him pretty well. We get along very well. We're also friends as well as business associates. And we're colleagues. We own a company together, but we also work together as artists. And fortunately, we work in different fields, so there's not a conflict of interest there. Chuck is an actor. I'm a director and a writer and a producer. So we get on pretty well, and I think our relationship is an advantage. Like many good creative partnerships, Chuck's one fault might be that he is so professional, so concerned about responsibility. He'll sometimes turn into an assistant director on the set and push himself too hard and want to push the company, move things along, and I'll have to go up and I'll say, Chuck, you know, let us worry about what time it is. You worry about the performance. You worry about the creative aspects of it. We'll tell you if we don't have time for another take. If you want another take, take the damn take. It doesn't take that much time to do one extra take. What takes time is screwing around trying to put it back together when you haven't done it right in the first place. So I think Chuck's great strength, the other side of that coin, is his sincere desire to be both an artist and a professional at the same time. And I think that really shows in his work, actually.
Through the early stories in Genesis, God is visibly there, strongly involved, controlling events, though less so for the later prophets.
Well, Fraser and Chuck have done a lot of films together, 3 or 4 actually, and this project is really extremely stimulating for both of them. It was basically Chuck's idea to do the Bible as literature, presenting it as an actor would. And Fraser immediately said, "That's a great idea." And all of a sudden, here we are in the Negev, photographing these glorious mountains. And I'm tagging along to take pictures, as I always do.
I remember when the Indiana Jones series came on TV, I was watching the pilot, and I was watching it with some friends, and there's this scene where the young Indiana Jones is dragged over to England, and he's forced by his parents to read the classics. And I thought, well, I had to do that. And then he has to study all the Latin and the Greek and all of that. And I thought, well, I had to do that too. And then he goes to Cairo and they climb the pyramids, and his mom has a governess and she drags him to the top of the pyramids. And I thought, well, my mother dragged me to the top of the pyramids, and she also dragged me to the mines of Yucatan and all these other wonderful places. And somebody said to me, well, you must sort of identify yourself with Indiana Jones. And I said, no, 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 my mother is Indiana Jones, not me.
Heston and his crew may not have faced the dangers encountered by Indiana Jones, but they did have to overcome many hazards during production. One scene in the Negev desert called for shots from the top and the bottom of an 80-foot bluff.
Then there was that business with the apple. When Adam and Eve ate the apple, they were no longer simply God's creatures, innocent as animals in the safety of the garden.
Since there were no trails, the entire crew, including Heston, had to climb down through a cleft in the rock using safety ropes. Everyone made it, but the danger didn't end there. A movie crane is balanced with the utmost care. Had the camera end dropped just a bit below the wheels, that balance would be lost, and the camera, crew, and crane would have tumbled over the cliff.
We've had a lot of excitement with this film, on the set and even off the set. The day that we climbed up on that giant tell that looks down over the ruins of Bet-Shan, of course Chuck felt he had to climb the stairs instead of taking the Jeep up the back way. It was windy and cool and very exhilarating on that peak. It all turned out beautifully.
Over the course of my life, I've had the opportunity to go to many of the places that some cultures feel are very spiritual, like Easter Island and Machu Picchu and places around South America and other places. But coming to Sinai, I really had the feeling that if there was ever a place that God was going to give somebody some rules, this would be it.
Everyone on the crew embraced the spirit of discovery that permeates the great biblical texts from Adam and Eve onward. Inspired by these timeless stories of hardship and faith, the crew felt a growing sense of purpose. There was an awareness of the spiritual which made this production unique even to veterans of the industry. Heston, of course, had experienced all this before. Nearly 40 years earlier, the great director, Cecil B. DeMille, had cast him in the role of Moses. Now, in a homecoming of sorts, he was returning to the location where he had shot his first scenes in the Ten Commandments, and where Moses himself is said to have received the law from the hand of God. Heston may not have found God on that mountain, but in the process of filming the Ten Commandments, and now Charlton Heston presents the Bible, he certainly found Moses.
As in many other aspects of the film, we were very fortunate in that it came together at a time when we could utilize a crew that we worked with before. Tony's been on a couple of other pictures with Fraser and Chuck. I have. And we're basically all doing whatever it needs to get it done. We're not just wearing one hat.
Okay, stand by for picture, please. Quiet, please.
Turns out I'm the first female first AD that Charlton Heston has ever worked with on a movie. But ironically, I'm also someone he's known since I was 2 years old. The first couple of days were a little rocky, and I found that Charlton Heston was calling me sir, and then not getting a little flustered about it. So he, being a very professional actor, was trying to find the motivation for being able to rationalize calling me sir, even though he's known me since I was a little girl. What he actually came up with is that in the cartoon Peanuts, there is a very tomboyish character named Peppermint Patty, and all the other characters call her sir. So once he found that motivation, he got relaxed about it, I got relaxed about it, and he calls me sir, as well as through some of the Israeli grips. One of them called me sir, and then it said, I mean baby.
Here we came, the American group came, 12,000 miles across the ocean and met the Israeli group, and we went to work right away. And there was an immediate integration. These guys are professionals, just in the same sense that we are. I mean, there's an equality of professionalism and knowledge. There's sometimes a language problem, but the techniques for filmmaking are the same, whether it's here or in the U.S. or wherever. And we just went right to work, and it's been a delight. We sit around at night, we all go after we finish, we go take a swim, or maybe go down and have a drink at the bar, go out to dinner. It's been a lot of fun, and I've made some friends here, and I know it's been a reciprocal thing. There's been mutual respect and admiration.
The mutual respect and team spirit that permeated the production was something that Heston had come to expect many years earlier. In his book, Charlton Heston's Hollywood, he recalls shooting the scene of a young Moses coming down from Mount Sinai after his first encounter with the burning bush. I suddenly had an idea, he wrote, and I turned to Mr. DeMille and said, I think I should go barefoot in this scene. DeMille was silent. He had a reputation for doing things his way, and Heston knew that. But he felt strongly, and so with trepidation he made his case. God, he said, had just commanded Moses to take off his shoes because he was walking on holy ground. Moses is excited, bewildered. The last thing he would have remembered to do was to put his shoes back on. When Heston finished, DeMille looked at him for what seemed like an eternity, then said quietly, I think you're right. We'll do it.
Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground.
Movie making, there are always a lot of people using a lot of equipment, so it's usually pretty noisy. But a few moments ago, I took a walk around the edge of this big rock here, and there's an Egyptian temple, which is about 3,000 years old. And for a moment while there, it was absolutely quiet. There was not a sound beyond the sound of the limit of my own hearing. It was really very nice.
Okay, guys, quiet.
Wait. I'm going to say Jesus instead of Christ.
Film locations are indeed noisy, chaotic places, but confused, never. Each man and woman had a very special job to do, and they did it with grace and precision. In fact, in the course of filming, something remarkable happened. A diverse crew consisting of Americans, Canadians, Israelis, Muslims, Christians, and Jews all banded together in pursuit of a common goal, that of bringing to life the greatest stories ever told by one of the greatest storytellers of our time.
What amazes me about this undertaking is not only the challenge, the opportunity, the rewards, the satisfaction of doing this material in this way, in these places, but that I'm the first one to do it. I can't believe nobody else has done it before.
When Charlton Heston Presents the Bible finally premiered on the Arts and Entertainment Network, it was immediately praised as a monumental achievement. The New York Times called Heston's performance powerful, while the Wall Street Journal noted that the film was steeped in spiritual passion. The success of the project was certainly due in part to Heston's lifelong fascination with the stories of the Old and New Testaments. Over the years, he had come to know and understand these magnificent tales. What's more, he had come to feel a sense of awe whenever he spoke the words attributed to Adam, Moses, and other heroic figures of the Bible. The impact of the series must also be attributed to Heston's brilliance as an actor. Few other performers of any generation could have brought to this project the subtle intensity that it so richly deserved. But the true key to this project's success was the work on which it was based. As Heston and his team so skillfully demonstrated, the stories of the Bible, from the tale of creation to the passion of Christ, carry with them a quality that is beyond description. They strike at the very essence of the human experience, and therefore continue to speak to us, believers and non-believers alike, to this day.